faking the moon landing back there.
It's giving me problems. I never have problems going live. It's giving me problems. Like it's spinning. It's like spinning in circles. It's okay. There we go. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Typical Skeptic podcast. I'm really excited about my guest today. Like what happened was, I'll just tell you guys, I had Carrie Cassidy on the other day, and she spoke so highly about Dr. Brown. And like, if you've been following my show for a while, like I've had Dr. Brown on before many times, you know, and every time we do a show, it's really good. And then at the last minute, I decided, I think we scheduled this meeting, Dr. Brown, like 2 days ago. We just did it kind of on a whim. And then I decided to add my good friend Nathan Ciszek to the mix, because we always do good shows together when I have Nate and Dr. Brown on. So a little bit about my guest, like Nathan Ciszek is he's a My Lab whistleblower and a contactee, and a researcher, and Dr. Brown is the founder and director of the Farsight Institute, a nonprofit research and educational organization established in 1995 to study the remote viewing phenomenon through scientific experimentation. Dr. Brown describes his research as a focused part of a broader field he calls sociophysics, integrating mathematics, social science, physics, and consciousness studies. He's the author of multiple books on remote viewing and non-physical perception, including Remote Viewing, The Science of Theory and Non-Physical Perception, as well as speculative works in the extraterrestrial life and consciousness fields such as Cosmic Voyage and Cosmic Explorers. Well, that's what the AI said. We know it's not spec. We know it's real because we know the ET phenomenon is real. But the Farsight Institute presents itself as a dedicated understanding remote viewing through scientific experimentation. And I'm really looking forward to what Dr. Brown has to say tonight. And I just want to give them both a big warm welcome back to the show. Nate, Dr. Brown, thank you guys so much for coming back on. How is everybody?
It's great. And let me say, let me give a shout out to Carrie Cassidy. You know, she's a soldier that has been slugging out alternative news stuff for decades. So she's the one who's taken a licking but keeps on kicking. She's great.
Yeah. We do good shows together, me and Carrie. Yeah, I like her. But okay, so what I wanted to ask you, Dr. Brown, I'm sure Nate wants to know the same thing. Like, what do you see going on a geopolitical landscape as far as like does that tie into what we were going to talk about tonight and the whole exopolitical landscape as well with the ETs?
Look, you can't get any more relevant to everything that we're doing at Farsight than looking at the geopolitical landscape. The work at Farsight for a few years now has been pointing to the approach of a time period where the whole world comes apart. I mean, the complete power structure of the entire system collapses. And it's being done, or it's being orchestrated on purpose. And we have been talking about that forever, and now we are just beginning the collapse phase. We call it entering the wilderness. Now, last week, I have a weekly broadcast that I have on Sunday nights at around 7 o'clock. Yeah, on the Farsight YouTube channel, as well as on our streaming service, farsightprime.com. But the live stream happens on YouTube at 7 o'clock on Sundays. And the last one was entering the wilderness. And the one that we just gave like yesterday was it was a different idea, but it was related, and it was the idea. It was called Satan and the Rebel Problem, and I was talking about Paradise Lost, written by John Milton, and Paradise Lost has two major arcs in it. One deals with the so-called fallen angels, and the other deals with Adam and Eve. But I was dealing with the fallen angels idea, and the whole idea is that there was a time period where throughout the entire galaxy, this is summarizing sort of zillions of work done at Farsight, which everyone can see on our streaming service, farsightprime.com, that there was a galactic war, very similar to the Star Wars, the George Lucas version of Star Wars. I want to sort of really emphasize that whenever I mention Star Wars, I'm always referring to the first 6 movies that were done by George Lucas. I'm not talking about anything that was done by Disney, which took it in a completely different, crazy direction. So the idea is that there was, for real, a galactic war, a Holocaust that lasted for like 1,000,000 years. It's over now, more or less. So things are sort of settled, but the authoritarian side has sort of settled in to a section of the galaxy where we are now. And Earth is a prison, literal, not metaphorical. It is a prison that is run by that authoritarian side. So what we call, and we call the ETs that are doing that, the bad ETs. And they have written agreements with the United States government, and a few other governments, Israel, and a few others, to allow them to have a free will agreement to operate on Earth. And mostly they have underground bases. Under Area 51 is a huge one, but there's many others. And in exchange for the ability to conduct experiments on human subjects. Now, the written agreements really suggested very few people, subjects, would be involved, and they would mostly be mentally ill or sick or something like that, and they wouldn't remember anything. It was a complete violation of the thing. It's the largest human trafficking organization on the planet Earth. We're dealing with millions of people. And it's the so-called abduction phenomenon that's still going on. Well, there's a whole story about the bad ETs, which I've talked about for a long, long time on many of the shows on farsightprime.com. However, with regard to the good ETs, everyone on this planet comes from some other place. Nobody dies, so everybody's an eternal being. We call it an ISBE. Some other people call it a soul, a spirit, but there's so much religious baggage along with those words. We just discard them. An immortal spiritual being. We all are immortal spiritual beings, and we have physical bodies that we wear. The very fact that most people, almost everyone on the planet, doesn't even know that, and they hope and they pray they have a soul, and they hope and they pray that they can go to heaven afterwards and have eternal life. Otherwise, all that is religious baggage that has been thrown in by the prison authorities to help control the population. So the good ETs, they look at this prison population as their friends and relatives. This is where we came from someplace, and we are in a state of psychological control. So you don't remember who you are, where you came from. You don't remember anything. You don't think you have any perceptual capabilities, no telepathy, no nothing. It's all part of the conditions of the prison system. And the good ETs want us back. They want to free everybody. And so they have taken some structures of chaos that were set up by the bad ETs to keep humanity always in a state of turmoil. The bad ETs always have one war after the next, one crisis after the next, one thing after the next. So the good ETs took all those things and they managed to compress them. They didn't create these crises, but they compressed them so that they all happen at the same time. So, Rob, this is the answer to your question. That's what's happening right now. We are entering the wilderness. And the reason that is what it is because the good ETs are trying to collapse the information control system so that the bad ETs can't, through their human collaborators, they can't control the system anymore. Too much comes out, too many crises, too many things happen all at once, and the whole information control system goes away. There's a total discreditation of the authorities, and everything collapses. And that basically means nobody will be able to believe anybody in authority. Presidents, prime ministers, whatever, they're all people are going to say it. The whole information control system, the media, the scripting, the control of the media, the control of everything is just going to collapse. And that will produce a window of time, not a long window, but it will be a window of time where everybody no longer looks at the authorities for hypnotic guidance. And everybody then momentarily, for some time period, has the ability since the hypnotic trance is gone, to make a free will choice. And the good ETs are free will absolutists. So people will have a free will choice to say, we don't want to align ourselves with the bad ETs. To heck with the government written agreements. And then the free will, then in a state of free will, the humanity has a chance to say, we want to align ourselves with the good ETs. And at that point, the planet is no longer controllable by the bad ETs and the good ETs, which in this solar system at the current moment vastly outnumber militarily the bad ETs, but they're free will absolutists. So what we have is a free will decision made by the governmental authorities to have technology exchange, weapons technology exchange, in exchange for letting the bad ETs conduct their experiments, which means a huge human trafficking operation. That's a free will agreement. And the good ETs say, well, we have to have a different agreement. And since the political authorities are totally corrupted, it's got to be from the masses. So this Armageddon type of situation, looking like it's developing into World War III, it's by design, and it needs to happen. It needs to happen. Not because we want chaos, but we need a window of time where everyone will be broken away from the information sources. For example, if you look at CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, any of the major outlets, you get a very scripted view of what's going on. It basically is a view that suggests from the very beginning that, for example, the U.S. is really beating up Iran. Iran's having a tough time up against the ropes and stuff like that. The reality is the war is going very badly for the U.S. side. It's asymmetric warfare that's going on right now. Now, symmetric warfare is where, say, two conventional armies, like during World War II, with personnel carriers, tanks, things like that, they clash. Asymmetric warfare, where one side has a conventional force, like what we have, and the other side is doing something totally different. So what we have is 20th century technology. We have World War II technology, aircraft carriers, jets, tanks, and those are basically pretty much useless in asymmetric warfare because the Iranians are using just missiles. The Iranians have tens of, 10,000 plus of these missiles, and they can produce these drones and missiles at a rate of 500 a day. So they're producing them, and they have a zillion of them, and they're cheap. The drones, the drones that look sort of like winged craft, they have just those drones alone. They can produce like apparently about 500 a day, just of those drones by themselves. And those are the ones that are flying all over the place. They're cheap. They're less than 50,000. They're 50,000 or less. They go as cheap as 35,000 each. And for us to knock them out takes an interceptor missile that costs about $1 million. We have a very limited supply of interceptors, and we're almost completely out. The Israelis are almost completely out. And that's what the initial phase of the war is from the Iranian perspective. Just keep shooting cheap-ass drones and cheap-ass missiles at Israel and U.S. allies, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, the whole thing. Keep shooting those cheap things and then using up the interceptors. Well, the interceptors are almost gone now. And so there's no real way to defend yourself. And then the Iranians can start shooting more drones. They have zillions of them, but also the big ones, the bigger missiles. Right now, they're shooting cluster missiles, cluster bombs, missiles with cluster bombs on them over Israel. And there's no defense against anything like that. What is one interceptor missile going to do against a missile that comes over Israel and then breaks out into 25, 30 different missiles? And you can't do that. So these cluster munitions are landing all over the place in Israel. The Iranians apparently have the ability to, meaning they have enough of these missiles to essentially flatten Israel. Now they've shipped a lot of the missiles to Hezbollah. So the Hezbollah people are shooting into Israel. And apparently with almost no resistance, the things are just landing on Israel. There's strict censorship in Israel with respect to what is allowed to be shown, so you're not getting it from the Israeli side. But there are news channels, not CNN, MSNBC, or Fox, but there are news channels like on Telegram, where you can, with these Telegram channels, they're actually getting like pictures and stuff like that of what's really going on. And it's hell. It's just hell. So the war, it looks like it's not going to be a quick war at all. It'll go on for months. However, Israel and the United States cannot last for months. That's the problem. So this thing is going to escalate. Now, Donald Trump has a couple options. He's got, well, I can just declare victory and withdraw, but everyone would recognize that would be a loss. The United States has not won a war since World War II. Now, you can sort of say Korean War, but that really wasn't. They fought the North Koreans and then basically stopped. And they divided the country in half and said, we're going to quit. So the United States have not, definitively won a war since World War II. And that was the last long war we fought and won also. So the U.S. military is really set up for really fast things. And the military equipment that the United States has is equipment that is meant for show and tell. It's supposed to inspire fear and awe, high-tech stuff. It's not supposed to be used in long, drawn-out battles. There's not enough of it. So you have this huge cash cow, the American defense industry, pumping trillions of dollars into these weapons that are essentially useless in asymmetric warfare. And then you have a situation where the technology that's being used is pretty much useless as well. For example, the aircraft carriers. You can't get the aircraft carriers very close to the Iranian situation. Aircraft carriers, if you hit them on the side, like for the submarine torpedo type of thing, they're really solid. I mean, those things, the sides of aircraft carriers are like a rock. I mean, they're solid. You're not gonna do much damage hitting them on the side. However, the top of those aircraft carriers are essentially just porous, and the inside of the aircraft carriers is just a large gas tank. You see all those jets that they fly? Well, they have to fill them up on the aircraft carrier. It's a huge gas tank. So to destroy an aircraft carrier, it's very simple. You just have to hit it with a missile from the top. Now, every aircraft carrier comes with a fleet of 13 ships, including an AWACS plane above to be able to detect anything coming from the top because it's vulnerable from the top. But you can't defend yourself against a hypersonic missile. So even if the AWACS sees a hypersonic missile coming, all they're going to do is look at it. It's a hypersonic missile. And so one hypersonic missile is all that's needed to take out an aircraft carrier. Now, China has invested heavily in hypersonic missiles, and Iran has a ton of hypersonic missiles. Some of the hypersonic missiles that Iran has are Chinese, and some of them are homegrown. Some of them have been sold to Russia to be used in the Ukraine war, in fact, the Iranian homegrown ones. So one hypersonic missile is all it takes to knock out an aircraft carrier. And Peter Hegseth, the Secretary of the Department of War, as it's now called, has officially stated on a video that all simulations conducted by the United States Pentagon, all, have the Chinese military being able to completely eradicate the entire American Navy aircraft carrier force, all of them, in 30 minutes. You got that, guys? In 30 minutes. That's not me talking. That's Pete Hegseth. He's the Secretary of the Department of War. So these hypersonic missiles can take out those aircraft carriers like really, really easy. So President Trump is in a situation where his military has to keep those things relatively far away. And it's only a matter of strategy when the Iranians decide to escalate to the point of taking out the aircraft carriers.
Dr. Brown, I just had to ask you this. I see this situation escalating because it seems like Trump doubled down, and I've tried to support Trump, like but like I did a world peace meditation. I'm kind of like against the war, but like at the same time, I'm like about America first. I wish like I see like what I see is this, like where I was going with this is I see this weakening our country from from other attacks. Like say like China wanted to invade Taiwan or Russia wanted to come out but I feel like we're using up so many resources. And then on top of that, I feel like we're going into a hornet's nest with Trump deploying these 2,500 Marines to the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, I want to support America, and I do support America, and I love my country. My dad was a Vietnam veteran. My grandfather was World War II prisoner of war. So I love my country, but I'm just worried. I'm honestly worried. I am. I'm not going to lie.
Well,
I just wanted to throw that in there.
we've just been talking about the Iranian side of Armageddon, okay, in terms of that part of the war. But you're totally right. The expedition force of however many thousands of troops landing into Iran in someplace, they're going to have a hornet's nest of missiles raining down on them. I don't see how they're going to be survivable. So it looks really, really tough from that perspective. Now, in terms of which side I'm not on anybody's side. I'm a political scientist who work at a university. I'm just looking at it from a technical point of view. I'm just looking at it from the perspective of, I'm a pacifist myself. I don't want anyone to fight anybody, but I'm just looking at it in terms of the structure. So let's look at it now in terms of the Ukraine war with Russia, and then we'll go to Taiwan. And you'll see how all of these things are coalescing. What we're doing is we're entering the wilderness. We're not in the middle of the wilderness. The whole world is coming apart, but we're entering the wilderness. The entering is starting with the Iranian stuff. But if you were Russia, if you were President Putin in Russia, you'd be noticing that the war in Ukraine is really dragging Russia down. It looks like Russia is doing pretty well against Ukrainians. The reality is, militarily, they're doing pretty well, but it's really costing them a lot. Their populace is not happy. They've lost a ton of soldiers, a ton of equipment, a ton of money. It's not a happy situation inside Russia. And Russia would like to end this thing, but they want to end it on their terms. Now, if you were Vladimir Putin, so Nathan and Rob, I want to say, put yourself in the seat of Vladimir Putin. You now have a moment of time where the entire U.S. military is all tied up with Iran. The entire stock of interceptor missiles is depleted. Possibly the aircraft carriers will be taken out. American bases all throughout the Middle East are vanishing. They're being blown up by the missiles. All of America's defense capabilities is focused on the Middle East. If you were Vladimir Putin, wouldn't you take this time to really end the Ukraine war? That means the United States doesn't have any equipment left to send to Ukraine. The European powers are Lilliputian powers. They have very small militaries. They offer no real threat. But they do have missiles and other things like that they've been using and shipping to Ukraine. If you were Vladimir Putin, wouldn't you think this is a good time to maybe start bombing or shooting with missiles the weapons depots that are in Germany, Britain, possibly France, to sort of get rid of these supplies that are feeding into the Ukraine war? You want to end that thing quick. The war is not a happy camper type of situation in Russia. And now you have the entire United States, totally occupied and can't do anything, and they don't have any military supplies to ship over. So from a political perspective, you can expect the Russians not to be stupid. They're going to take advantage of this moment in time. If they say, no, we'll wait a couple years, fight this, we'll slug it out in Ukraine for another couple years, and then that gives the United States the time to rearm, to buy more things, to recover. Are they going to be stupid and do that? Now let's go to President Xi in China. They want Taiwan. Everybody in the world agrees Taiwan is theirs anyway. At least 40% of the population of Taiwan, maybe 45%, wants unification anyway. They have a political party that regularly gets about 45% of the vote that wants unification anyway. They've got tremendous fingers inside Taiwan and huge business collaboration between Taiwan and mainland China. Now we have a situation where the United States is totally occupied in the Middle East. No more interceptor missiles. The Chinese wouldn't even have to worry about taking out the aircraft carriers because the Iranians might do that. Wouldn't you take advantage of this moment in time rather than wait a couple years to see if do it all over again? If the United States has a period of time to rearm and to restart everything, wouldn't you take advantage and say, this looks like a good time to finish off the Taiwan situation? So you have really tremendous potential for escalation on both the Ukrainian side, actually you're talking the European side, and in our remote viewing studies, we do see explosions, missiles, things like that hitting Western Europe.
Wow.
Yeah, Britain, France, Germany. We see explosions in Western Europe. We've seen that and we've reported on it for a great many times in our deep news projects, for example. And then we have the situation in Taiwan. It just makes sense. In order to say that that the Chinese will not take advantage of this time to recover Taiwan, and that the Russians will not take advantage of this time to finish the war in Ukraine, you'd have to assume that President Xi and President Zelensky are stupid. Like I didn't mean Zelensky. I mean
Putin.
You'd have to say that President Putin of Russia and President Xi of China are just plain stupid. And if you say that, the only one who's stupid is you. They're not stupid. They're very smart people. And this is such an obvious opportunity. So what you're seeing is the world entering the wilderness. So Rob and Nathan, we're not in the wilderness. You're looking at the threats. You're thinking this thing is spinning out of control. Yeah, it hasn't spun out of control yet. It's spinning out of control. It's in the process. Now you have to also consider domestic United States. We also have remote viewing results where we have missiles and other explosions, other types of stuff happening inside the continental United States.
Oh my God.
The enemies of the United States know full well that the United States is never going to stop messing around with other people in other areas of the world unless it starts impacting the continental United States. We have been protected not by the military, but by two oceans, the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. So if you ask, why is the United States getting involved in all of these places, all of these wars everywhere? Because we're never affected in the homeland. They've got these navies all over the place. Not navies. You have these oceans on both sides. However, now we have a situation in which the enemies are specifically looking at the United States and realizing something has to happen domestically. So we have lots of remote viewing results where we actually see these things going off, missiles and things like that taking place inside the United States. Basically, what happened is during the Biden and Harris administration, and whenever I say this, somebody comes in and says, "Oh, you must be a MAGA." No, I'm not. I'm not partisan. I'm not pro-democratic. I'm not pro-Republican. I'm just being neutral. During the Biden and Harris administration, they had an open border policy. And literally approximately, no one knows the exact numbers, but about 14 million people walked across the border, captured on video recordings that were done by CNN, MSNBC, the liberal media, as well as Fox News, the conservative, and a zillion other people. It's not in dispute. We all saw it on video. And you had about 14 million people come across. Now, let's go to the stupid question again. The enemies of the United States, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Iran, they saw a completely open border to the United States. Anybody could walk across. Do you think they'd be stupid and not take advantage of that moment? So during that time, during that time period, they had people come in. You don't need a lot of. What's that?
We started freezing up again. You were freezing up, Courtney. Then first Rob, then you.
Okay. Well, during that time period, during the Biden and Harris administration, you had you had lots of people come across, about 14 million, all recorded live on video. And the enemies of the United States, obviously, unless you're going to call them complete idiots and stupid, they sent some of their own operatives over. That's why we know that we have sleeper cells in the United States. Now, when you think about the drugs that come in the United States, people often say, oh, it must be a backpackers that are being used to bring in the drugs. No. The quantity of illegal drugs in the United States requires 18-wheelers to deliver. And campers. What they do, the cartel people use campers and they use 18-wheelers. The campers that they use are the big campers that you see with an old guy and an old woman, a retired couple driving across the country. Well, they know that they're not going to be stopped by the police, these large campers. So they steal these campers and they pack them with drugs. And then they also use 18-wheelers. Now, for the 18-wheelers, it's very simple how you get them into the country. There's corruption in the border system a lot. And it was really bad during the, I don't know how much it's clamped down recently, but during the Biden and Harris administration, it was really bad. And since the drugs are still coming into the United States, you have to assume it's still bad. Basically, what it is you have a warehouse in Mexico near the border. The 18-wheeler drives into the warehouse. It enters a tunnel. The tunnel goes under the border and comes out in the United States inside another warehouse. The door of the warehouse opens up and the 18-wheeler drives off. That's how they get these things in. Now, if you can, and it should be logical to everybody that this is what's happening because of the quantity of illegal drugs that are in the United States. There's no other way you can transport those things unless you have these large vehicles. The quantity is it's just logic. So the issue is during that time period, would you be, if you were running Iran or Al Qaeda or ISIS, would you say, oh, well, we're not going to do that. We'll just we'll have some operatives come in and I bet we can buy some 22 caliber pistols out of Walmart. That's what we'll do. We'll use those in Walmart. No, they're going to ship in big stuff, including missiles on those same trucks that are being bribed into the United States. And so inside the United States, you can safely assume that there are many operatives and that there are many heavy weapons, not just like rifles and pistols. You can assume that there's some serious weaponry inside. So my assumption is, and this is, by the way, this is now being acknowledged by some intelligence analysts that you can actually start seeing on YouTube now. They're now talking about it openly. The FBI and the CIA have also notified, and Homeland Security have also notified that now is the time they're looking for those sleeper cells. And President Trump has actually mentioned it as well. We're going to find them, things like that. They're acknowledging that these things are real. And FBI and so on is on high alert for these things. So what you can actually expect is that these sleeper cells will be activated at some point in time. And the comments that I've been seeing by some intelligence people that you can now see on YouTube is that will probably happen when feet hit the ground, when boots hit the ground, when U.S. boots hit the ground inside Iran, whether it's on Karg Island or someplace else. So, Rob, you asked about that, the boots on the ground. So the idea is when that happens and you actually get American troops on Iranian soil, that is probabilistically the most likely time when some of the sleeper cells would be activated. Now, I'm not predicting that. I'm just saying probabilistically that seems to be, the most likely time. The Iranians are fighting an extremely well-designed, clever strategy. It's very, very hard. They are fighting a long war that they plan on winning through attrition. And they know that the United States simply cannot do that. Their goal is not to defeat Israel. Their goal is to drive the United States completely out of the Middle East. And that means remove all the bases and infrastructure and everything in the Middle East. They want that. That's what they ultimately want. And when the sleeper cells start getting activated, then you have to do that at a special time, Because if you activate them too early, then the American populace will rise up like a Pearl Harbor type of event, 9/11 type of event, and people just, go panicky, and then then Congress can do anything they want with regard to, new weapons, new funding, new everything to fight the war. And so it really it has to be done at a precise moment to minimize that type of a thing. So when there are boots on the ground in Iran, American boots on the ground in Iran, that would be the most likely time when the sleeper cells would be activated. Now, there's no promise, there's no guarantee, but if you're looking at it simply from a technical, strategic point of view, the probabilities increase once American boots are on the ground inside Iran. And yeah, so what you're seeing is the convergence of multiple crises. Ukraine, the Middle East, Taiwan, China, and then you have the crisis within the United States. So one of the goals of the Iranian strategy is to bankrupt the American economy. And they seem to be doing a good job at doing that. They're trying to destroy the petrodollar, which is why they're going after American infrastructure, or actually oil infrastructure, that's in the Middle East and Western aligned or American aligned countries in the Middle East. They're going after the oil facilities. They're going after all types of things that relate to the petrodollar. Because when Nixon, if you remember Richard Nixon back in the days, when he took the Americans off of the gold standard, that freed up America just to print money, to do whatever it wanted. So there was no guarantee that anybody would really want American dollars if they weren't backed up by gold. So they made a deal with the Middle Eastern countries, Saudi Arabia in particular, and some others, to say, all right, this is the deal we're going to want. We're off the gold standard, but we want all oil that you guys produce to be sold in dollars. That means nobody could buy petrodollars. Nobody could buy oil from anywhere in the Middle East unless they paid for it in dollars. That meant people needed dollars. You couldn't pay for it in rubles. You couldn't pay for it in yuan. They wanted dollars. So that elevated the value of the dollars. And what Iran is trying to do is to destroy that link, to destroy the petrodollars. So, and they're doing that by basically cutting off the oil supplies coming out of American-aligned countries in the Middle East by bombing them. Now, they haven't been they've been going after some of the actual oil production facilities as well. But, it's an incremental process, cutting off the Strait of Hormuz. That was part of it. Basically, it's if there's no oil coming out of the Middle East because the facilities have been bombed, and that's what they're doing, then the petrodollar is worthless. You can't buy something in dollars if it's not available. And so then you have to then say, well, then what are the strategies that people are looking at, sort of end game strategies? There's two most critical parts that have not yet happened, but if the Iranians are push comes to shove, they can do this. All of the Middle East countries are deserts. Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Dubai, all those types of things. Qatar. They rely on desalination plants. Otherwise, they have no water. No water at all. Zero. They don't have water. So you can completely destroy those countries with just a few hypersonic missiles that blow up the desalination plants. And then those countries and all the oil that comes out of them is gone. So that's the ultimate threat. You kick America out, tell their ambassadors to go take a hike, close down everything, get all the American bases out of the Middle East, or else. So bombing the facilities is step number one. Scaring people, step number two. Closing off the Strait of Hormuz, step number three. And eventually, if that doesn't work, just kill the water supply. And those countries are dust. Literally, literally desert dust. Now, the United States has a possible strategy that it could use with regard to water. Iran has much more water in it than Saudi Arabia, for example, but it's still not good. And there is some in the mountains, in the northern mountains of Iran, there's a water structure. There's a lake, but it's drying up. But there's a water basic infrastructure that feeds much of Iran. The United States could bomb it and thus deprive Iran of its water. So Iran is vulnerable to it. It's not as vulnerable as Saudi Arabia. It doesn't rely on desalination plants, but it's still vulnerable, and the water supplies could be taken out. If that happens, then Iran becomes, especially in northern Iran, becomes ungovernable. So then you have the various ethnic groups, the Kurds and others, taking over, and the sort of Iran starts to break up in pieces like that. So it's really a question of not counting the missiles and looking at what you're seeing now. Now is just the beginning. And all I've been doing is showing you possibilities for escalation. I'm not predicting all of these things. I'm just saying these are the possibilities for escalation. And you can assume the longer the wars drag out, the more you're going to see this escalation until it eventually will open up into armed conflict in Europe, armed conflict in China with respect to Taiwan, conflict within the domestic United States, taking out the oil supplies and possibly the water in the Middle East. That's sort of the culmination. And when that happens, the United States economy would crash completely. It's a totally debt-ridden economy. And when that happens, domestic stuff inside the United States is over. And there you have the possibility before the 2028 elections, there you have the possibility of the United States breaking up, literally fragmenting. So this can go into many different directions. The biggest mistake you can make now is to look at what's happening now and saying, so that's it. How is this going to be resolved? No. This is going to, it's like a spider. It's going to have arms that go out in every direction. And the question is, how fast is the escalation going to happen? And the only way you could really be stopped is if President Trump says, we've won, and just stole back, takes the entire military out of the Middle East and say, that's it. But he's actually starting to talk about stuff like, I don't even know why we're in the Middle East. It's on the other side of the country. We have other side of the planet. We have plenty of oil ourselves. Now they have more with Venezuela. So why even worry about this thing? He wouldn't be saying comments like that if his advisors weren't telling him this war is way more dangerous than we thought. So anyway, that's the long and the short of it. You asked me about the sort of Armageddon scenario. What I'm trying to emphasize to you is we are entering the wilderness. We are not in the wilderness. My last two spotlights, which people can watch on farsightprime.com, they're also available on YouTube. The spotlights are something we publish on both YouTube and farsightprime.com. Those are talks where I talk and explain things. The last one for this Sunday, as well as the last Sunday, focus just on the wilderness issue. Yeah, and how we're entering it.
Wow, that was it can get really dangerous. Nate, did you want to comment, or did you want to tell us what you think about all this?
Yeah, I was going to ask, in your projections or your remote viewing studies, how far do you see this actually? How far do you see this going? Do you see Russia getting involved at some point, and then this unraveling into a global conflict, like the War of Armageddon? Because it seems like the Satanists are attempting to stage something like that, or something close.
Well, there's a couple things. In terms of the remote viewing stuff, we see all of the above happening. But the world is probabilistic. So you have to say the as Yoda says, the future is always in motion. So everything that happens is probabilistic. It's not a single discrete timeline. So what you have to deal with is probabilities. In addition to this, we at Farsight have been we have been told that we had to start video recording these and publishing this. So this is not secret anymore. It used to be secret. We've been having meetings with extraterrestrials for years. And we've been doing this in secret, in locations, secret locations in the middle of the night. And we've been meeting them. And at their insistence, they said they want no secrets. They want no secrets at all. These are the good ETs. They're the free will absolutists. And so we have had to record them. And we were very hesitant because we didn't want the ridicule factor. But we're doing it, and we've been publishing them, and we continue to publish them. And they have been telling us about this period in time for a long time period. They've been very concrete with a lot of stuff. Like back in what was it, 2024? I think it was. When was the time that I think it was? No, it wasn't 2024. When was the time? Well, you remember the time that there were drones. Huge numbers of drones, like thousands of drones all over
drones
the place.
and in orbs too. Yeah, there was a lot of them were in Jersey and New York, but then they started popping up all over. I think we did a show on that.
Yeah, and
beginning of the year last year, wasn't it?
In one of our meetings, ET board meetings that we had, two ETs came and they sat at the table and we were talking with them. One of the things that he said, we're gonna do this. We're gonna show up in ships all over the place, and we're not using any stealth technology. Everybody will be able to see them. Just go out with your cell phone cameras and everything, and it's going to start right away. That was November 13th, and I forget the actual year, but it was like a couple of years ago.
Probably 2024.
2024, yeah, it was November 13th, and then we published a video of that interaction on the November 15th. And on November 18th, the drones exploded all over the world, everywhere. And the United States government was saying, we don't know what they are. We don't, if you remember, the whole government, the Defense Department, their spokespeople, President Trump, they were all saying, we don't know. We don't know where these things came from. So that was one of the types of things that they've been telling us, sometimes extremely concrete. So anyway, they've been telling us about this sort of Armageddon situation. So in addition to our remote viewing stuff, we've also got what they've been telling us, which is the things are going to get really bad in the sense that a complete collapse of the system. It's because you can't talk to people. Like, look at the importance of the stuff that we talk about. Look at the view counts of what we get. You're not talking 90 million people. You're not talking the same type of view counts that PewDiePie has, the same kinds of view count that Candace Owens has, or Tucker Carlson has, or Megyn Kelly has, or you're not talking that level. You're talking thousands. So the information control system is really still solid. Farsight is the only remote viewing organization that is totally shadow banned on YouTube and Google. So if you actually search for remote viewing, we're the absolute largest venue for remote viewing anywhere on the planet by far. We have our own streaming service. We have so much content. We're the only place where you can actually get full, complete projects, sessions, all recorded live, all recorded, totally blind, with scientific controls everywhere. And we're the only place that you can get that. You'll find hundreds of thousands of websites talking about remote viewing, but you don't find any sessions in progress and projects. You don't find anything normal. If you do a search for remote viewing on YouTube or Google, that's what you'll get. Nothing. You get a lot of useless websites, including a lot of stuff dating back to the early military studies. We're back in 1980s and things like that. But you won't find Farsight on Google as well as YouTube. Now, if you search for Farsight, you'll get us, of course. But that started in June of 2022. before June of 2022, that was when the U.S. military was required by Congress to start telling about the UFOs. Before 2022 June, we were always in the top 5 things of any YouTube or Google search, and then it suddenly was banished. And we can follow this. We do Google Analytics for, of course, because we have a large website stuff and our own streaming service, so we have the analytics, and we can follow it. So Google, for example, has AIs running their search. And we had one of our followers in New Zealand search for remote viewing. And typically, excuse me, we show up on page 10 or 11. So about, if you have, now mind you, we're the largest venue for remote viewing anywhere on the planet. And we were always in the top 5 results before June of 2022. But anyway, this one person was just testing it and exploring. And so he was doing it, and he found that we were somewhere on page 10. That means we're in the list of results on Google. We are on the list of about number 100. So the AI actually could figure out, based on what he was searching, what he was looking for. It could figure out that he was looking for Farsight. And as he continued to search, next page, we with Google Analytics, we could actually see what was going on. The AI was moving us down to the next page, to the next page, to the next page. So no matter how often he went, we were, in the beginning of a search, we were on page 100, on page 10, which is like the 100th entry. But as he continued to search, he still couldn't find us because the AI was moving us down. The AI didn't stop doing that until we were at position number 250. It's 25 pages, and eventually he found Farsight. Now, if you do a search for Farsight, we come up immediately right at the top. But if you do a search for remote viewing, we should be at the top. So, since we are the only ones that are being shadow banned by Google and YouTube, that tells you that what we're doing are the only things you should be watching.
That's a good
Yeah,
point. We had go ahead, Nate. Sorry.
Point to back up what you're saying. About 80% of the people that bring up remote viewing have not heard of the Farsight Institute, and that's exactly the reason why. And my son's friend came over last night, actually night before last, and the subject came up for remote viewing, and I said, "Have you ever heard of the Farsight Institute?" And he hadn't. And it isn't a surprise because they shadow ban everybody that they want to keep quiet, or at least keep from reaching the public, and that's what's happening.
Yeah, no,
So
Farsight has the largest footprint. We have a very large website. We have our own streaming service, and all of our work is available for scientific investigation, meaning our projects are video projects. And that means all of our work is the remote viewers do the work solo and blind to the projects. So they don't know anything about the target or the nature of the project when they do their sessions. And that includes the final step when they video record their results. We do it all in a cinematically interesting way, which is really great because they're fun to watch. We have 2 studios, and we do it in a really nice way. And then we take the transcripts of those of those remote viewing sessions of the full projects, which is every single word spoken by the remote viewers. Those are data sets because they're all conducted under totally blind conditions. They're data sets. And we offer those transcripts on our website and what we call the vault at farsight.org. By the way, and behind me, that's our normal website on the one side. And then on the other side, at the top is what you get. That's farsightprime.com, our streaming service, farsightprime.com. Farsight.org is the website. That's where you get that. And in the vault of that on the menu, you'll see the vault. And then on farsightprime.com, you get the full video projects. But in the vault on farsight.org, you have the transcripts. That's every word that's spoken. And the transcripts are specifically designed to be read and interpreted by AI so that anybody can download the transcripts and feed them into their ChatGPT or Gemini or Grok or Claude or whatever and talk about what's going on and about the stuff. And it includes all statistical stuff relating to how the accuracy of the results. And the accuracy is phenomenally high. So, we are the only group that offers not only the largest collection of remote viewing studies, all done under totally blind, scientifically controlled conditions, but also offer all of our data for scientific, and experiment for scientific inquiry. Every single word that's spoken under totally blind conditions is available. The words are data, and you can analyze them using AI. Nobody else does anything close to that. And we're the ones shadow banned, which is why we're shadow banned. We are the ones that they don't want you to see.
Yeah, we had a bunch of questions from the audience, Dr. Brown. I'll just kind of ask you, Best Life in the audience wanted to know about the Stargates, like if behind the scenes ETs are battling over the Stargates in Iran. Drago Reed's in the audience. Big shout out to Drago. He mentioned, is this like a Gog versus Magog, like end times prophecy that either Trump or the Israelis are trying to fulfill? I kind of added some stuff there, but and then also somebody wanted to know if you guys remote viewed the Air Force general that went missing recently. So sorry, a lot of questions there, but
these are like our projects typically take months to complete. So when you have an Air Force general that's suddenly missing, we don't have that. That's not something we don't come up with on the spot results like that. Now you do have people that call themselves remote viewers. That are working under totally front-loaded type of situations, but they say the word remote viewing. That do talk about things like that, and people put them on their shows. And part of the reason that's so heavily allowed in the infrastructure allows that to happen is from a scientific perspective. It totally discredits remote viewing, because if you have someone who's basically just a psychic, calling themselves a psychic, they know that if they call themselves a remote viewer, they get more credibility. And then they go on authoritatively saying, so this is what's happening. That's what's happening to the general. That's what's happening. So you get things like that happening. But that's not what we do at Farsight. Everything done at Farsight is done in highly controlled experiments that are done totally blind. The remote viewers work by themselves, and they work solo. So it takes a long time for us to do this stuff. You raise an interesting questions about when you started to talk about biblical prophecy. So no, we're not going into that type of thing right now, but we do investigate biblical stuff a lot. That's a very hot topic in Farsight, and we just recently released a really fun project to watch on farsightprime.com called Baal versus Yam. Baal versus Yam. Baal was the same as Zeus and Ra. So Baal, Zeus, and Ra are the same person. He's still around. He's not gone. And Ra, you actually have doing channeling with him. He's got a book, The Law of One, stuff like that. It's the same snake. It's the same devil. It's the same jerk. He is somebody that other parts of the galaxy have actually tried to arrest and imprison, but he's an extremely capable military person. He's just defeated him. Baal versus Yam is about an attempt that Yam had, who was opponent, to basically stop Baal from doing what he was doing. Baal is also Zeus, and that's Ra. They're pedophiles. So the Baal is a pedophile, and that is why I won't go into this all now, but if you look at the temple of Jeffrey Epstein, it's on Epstein's Island, Little St. James. It looks exactly like a Baal bathhouse during the type of architecture. It's painted. It's not made of the colored stones that they used back in the day. but it clearly is architecture that came out of Baal worship. Now, people will say, oh, no, it can't be because it doesn't look like the Baal temples. No, we're not talking about the Baal temples, but there's Baal stuff. And I did a whole spotlight describing that in detail, uh, the sort of the Baal connection with Epstein. Anyway, but that project that we just came out with on farsightprime.com, Baal versus Yam, is really, really very interesting. And it shows you the nature of the conflict between ETs that operate on Earth that fight each other and stuff like that. And we have also done projects on the Tower of Babel and also the biblical stuff of the seraphim, which were involved during the Judaic escape from Egypt. And the seraphim came out and they were told to punish the Israelites by going around and biting them and killing them and things like that. We did a whole project on them, and they were an extraterrestrial group of reptilians, that the so-called seraphim. Anyway, it goes on and on and on, but we have so many projects that have sort of a biblical type of stuff. And we also have lots of projects that are just plain mysteries, like the Rendlesham UFO incident, the Pine Gap base in Australia. Pine Gap, Area 51 is a super secret facility inside the United States. And President Obama was the first person to acknowledge that the facility actually exists. But, Pine Gap base is even more secret. When you have stuff that's too sensitive and too secret to put into Area 51, you put it into Pine Gap base in Australia. So we did a project on that. These are huge underground facilities. I mean, huge underground facilities. And we did one, for example, on the Kailasa Temple in India. And it goes on and on and on. So for those people who are interested in archaeological mysteries, we're the only place you can find out about those things. And, even it goes back to the Great Pyramid of Giza. We have a whole project on the Great Pyramid of Giza, the pyramid constructs. Those were built with ET tech. And we did projects on that using totally controlled, scientifically clean remote viewing. And so, this is the only place you can actually find like that. Farsightprime.com is essentially a library of information that the planet is going to need after Armageddon shocks them out of their hypnotic trance so that they're free to make a free will choice. By the way, the idea of the ETs the bad ETs having written agreements between the U.S. government to operate here on Earth and do what they do. They call them experiments, but it's really a human trafficking operation of huge proportions. That's not in dispute. Haim Eshed, Haim and then Eshed. He's the former CEO of the Israeli Space Directorate for 30 years. That's the Israeli version of NASA. He's also a decorated general and now a college professor. He has actually talked about this. He did it. He thought he was going to get away with it because he did it in Hebrew, in a Hebrew publication. But it turned out that a whole bunch of people know Hebrew, and it was immediately translated into a zillion languages. Anyway, but he's talked about the written agreements in print that the United States and Israel, for example, have, especially the United States, have with the extraterrestrials. That's been the stumbling block, for the free will ETs, because those were free will written agreements made by the leadership. The leadership is totally corrupted. So that's why they're trying to do this crisis collapse type of a thing, taking crises that were designed by the bad ETs, but they were supposed to stretch out for like 20, 30 years to one after the next in a sequential way to keep humanity always disrupted in a disruptive state, so it couldn't settle down and just sort of figure out what's going on. And so the good ETs said, well, we're just going to move them, crush them all into the same time period. And that's where we are now. We are entering the wilderness. So I'm assuming this thing is going to scale out, not just because of the remote viewing results, but also because of what the ETs have told us.
Nate, did you want to? You haven't talked much.
Well, yeah, sure. I got a couple of questions, I guess. Courtney Brown, have you read any of the books by Truman Cash? He's an author, or he's a MyLab victim. He's been abducted. He's had the whole MyLab experience. What's interesting about him, he wrote 2 books. They're available on the Project Avalon library for free. They're in free format. One is The Eye of Ra, and the other is The Programming of the Planet. In the book, The Eye of Ra, he's actually remembering himself as Ramses II, and he's going through these horrific human sacrifice rituals. This is after the pyramid was repurposed, and they were using the sarcophagus inside, where he was taking hallucinogens. There was human sacrifice. He was astral projecting outside over top of the pyramid, and he was interacting with Ra. And Ra was extremely tyrannical, and he goes into this whole story of this, and how the pharaohs were not actually in royal families, or he was actually dropped off from a spacecraft, was a clone. He was put into a human form, and he was made the pharaoh. Have you heard of any of those books? I mean, is that something that you may have read in the past?
No.
I can forward those to you so you can have a
No,
look
no,
at them.
I'm so overwhelmed with stuff I have to do, and there are so many people writing so much. I'm overloaded right now. I want to be honest. If there's some things I just don't know about, I just say I don't know about that.
Well, I can tell you this: it definitely supports your work at Farsight. I mean, it fits like like a key to a lock, or like a hand to a glove, because what he recounts is basically the same exact thing, except he goes into it from a personal perspective. So if you ever get freed up and things slow up a little bit, and you want to get back to the Egyptian stuff, I highly recommend checking that out.
Well, we're the Ball versus Yam goes back to that time period, and that was something we just put out. So we're not abandoning that time period at all.
Well, was that a negative versus? Was that a negative alien or ET group versus semi?
Well, you should watch it. Ball versus Yam. Ball was Zeus. He was a pedophile, and as above, so below. Epstein was right out of that. That's the thing. I mean, Zeus just went around the world. He was the prison warden for the prison planet Earth, and he had his own ships and his own groups, and he went around the world. He was in charge of the place, and he just ran around and raped underage girls in front of their own parents. He just was a pervert, and that's the same as Baal. That's the same as Ra. Ra is a good example. They know that push comes to shove, time is coming, and they're trying to reinvent themselves. They're trying to, create a historical record that makes them look like the good guys. That's how the Book of Law. That's how the Book of One came about, and that's how the channeling that Ra is doing right now. It's authentic. It's really authentic. It is a guy, but he's making himself. He's making himself sound like one of the good guys that's trying to help enlighten humanity. But this is like the Nazis in World War II coming back and saying, "Oh, it really wasn't all like that. It was something different." It was trying to reinvent who they are. So, that's what's going on right now. But Baal versus Yam. Yam was another extraterrestrial group that had sort of a similar foothold on Earth. But they were very opposed to this type of dramatic authoritarian tyranny that Zeus, Baal, Ra, they're all the same person, were doing. And they really wanted to sort of free things up. And so there was a battle. There was a struggle, a battle, Baal versus Yam. And that's what that thing is about. Baal won. Zeus, Baal, Ra won. And Yam had to sort of basically just bow out. But that's Zeus, Baal, Ra. They're very capable military commanders. That's the only reason he can still. There are people in the galaxy that want him arrested. He's very capable at defending himself. Very shrewd. That's why he's still there. He's still there. I mean, like to this day. And you can hear him. Just go to one of the Raw sessions, and you hear the guy sort of trying to redefine what he was, trying to make himself sound good. You can see sort of the part of the um, part of the stuff when you read this stuff. Focus on sort of methods that he uses, where he talks about the channeling person has to be like 1 degree to the left or 1 degree turn to the right to get to this high level of control. So everybody in the audience is like on the edge of their seat, like they're going to lose connections unless everything is exactly perfect. That's the type of psychological stuff. And there's a lot of stuff in the channeling community also that is being used by the bad ETs to pollute the information environment so people can't know what's really going on. For example, a
Yeah.
lot of in the channeling community, it's very common to hear somebody like big name channels say something like, somebody will come to them and say they were in a public setting, they were abducted and they didn't like it. And the channel will say something like, well, it's essentially saying you just got to suck it up. You made the agreement to do this in the first place and just get used to it, sort of get into it and get used to it. That's like a rapist going, holding a knife at the victim that's being raped. And then the rapist saying, look, just stop fighting. Just enjoy it.
And it's like Stockholm syndrome on the other end, Dr. Brown. Like, if the person
Yeah.
actually starts, like, it's exactly like Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah, the person had no prior agreement to do this. That's just a simple lie. So that's coming across strongly in the channeling community, that everyone's a volunteer, they're doing this, and they're trying to, and the people who are doing the abducting are actually future humans that are coming back in time. So it's your own cells that are, that's all crap. None of that's true.
Yeah, what they're doing is they're engineering consent. I've been warning about this since I started going to Rob's show. I call these virtual temple complexes because
none of that is true.
You can build a pyramid and reach a small number of people. But if you create a social media platform and you have various people out there being mind controlled, who are acting as a conduit of this information, a virtual temple complex reaches far more than 3 or 4.
The channeling community, especially with the big name channels, are extremely persuasive and extremely well distributed, and their messages have gone way beyond just the New Age community. They've really heavily polluted, and a lot of the people in the scientific community won't acknowledge that they've actually listened to them, but they've changed the topics quite a bit. But Rob and Nathan, I want you to do a thought experiment. Let us say, which is true, that they actually are extraterrestrials that are being channeled. Now, the human channels themselves, I have no fault with them. They are the best people in the world. They're just gullible. They're gullible.
For a second, Courtney. Some of this is military MyLab handler groups. When you have somebody that's been abducted, they've been conditioned over a period of years to become a social media influencer. At which point, a lot of cases, it isn't even real ET contact. The ETs are overseeing the operation, but it's military handlers that use remote mind control tech, remote neural monitoring. They completely monitor a person, so they construct a false awakening and a scenario where they become these influencers, and they've created networks. I've been watching this for a long time. It started, I think, back in the 50s.
Yeah, actually, to be quite honest, we just came out with one of our recent projects is mind control methods that are used by the United States government. In fact, that's our most recent one is mind control methods. Okay, but Rob and Nathan, just let me do a thought experiment with you. You have these channels spreading information through the human channels, and it sounds like the ETs that are transmitting are like a guy in a room on a spaceship, all by himself, sort of talking, having a nice chat with humanity, and it's recorded, put on YouTube, hundreds of thousands of people listening. If you were an extraterrestrial species and you were putting out information like that, would you allow one of your crew to do this as a rogue project all by himself?
Of course.
Would you say, okay, you want to talk to humanity, you just do it in the other room? No, that's crazy. If you were an intelligence operator anywhere in the United States or in an extraterrestrial spaceship, you would not allow that to happen. So you can be absolutely certain that those entities are not single people. They're intelligence organizations. And so when you're saying it's so and so, and you know their name and so on, and it's channeling in, that so and so is not a single being. That so and so is
Yeah,
probably a collective of people. It's orchestrated by AI. This is AI that's very advanced. They're making sure that every syllable, that every sentence, that everything comes through with the exact same tonation, the exact same personality. Hello, everyone. How are you today? I'm so grateful that everyone is coming. I want to share this particular moment with you. All that stuff is scripted, and the AIs make sure it's absolutely perfect. So these are complete psyop operations. All of these channels, it's not a single person sitting in a room in a spaceship having a chat. They're huge
no, it's a network.
operations. And the proof of that
You have
is
something else for me? I
the
just have
proof
to
of-
inject this real quick.
the
Hold on
proof
just a
of
sec, and this will help you with your point. Hold on. If you look at mainstream media, all of the same talking points drop at the same time. When you're dealing with this type of thing that you're talking about with channelers, that information and those talking points all drop at the same time. It's the same thing. So go ahead. Sorry, I just had to throw that in.
It's been, though they've been very influential. The only complaint I have with the human channels is they're a bit gullible. But the reason they're gullible is because they are so innocent, genuine, honest, sincere. They're chosen because they have those personal qualities. Because if you were going to use somebody to transmit information, would you pick somebody that looked like a sneaky used car salesman that was trying to sell you a piece of junk? No, I mean, it was like you'd pick someone that was ideal for that person, for that part, someone who was honest, sincere, that looked trustworthy and sounded trustworthy and was trustworthy. And so
you would shower them with false accolades. You wouldn't be negative to them. You would treat them good despite being negative, having a negative agenda.
You'd have to convince
so they
them.
trust these people.
Exactly.
It becomes part of their identity.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's what's going on. So I strongly encourage people to go to farsightprime.com and look at our latest project, which is mind control methods. And by the way, these are cinematically really interesting. I mean, they're really fun to watch. We're starting to introduce a lot of very high-end graphics for all of our recent stuff. So you'll see that, and our pipeline is building to be able to do that on a regular basis with all of our stuff. So these are fun projects to watch. So I'm gonna have to be wrapping up pretty soon. I'm gonna have to be wrapping up pretty soon. So I wanted to ask if there's any particular super important questions you want to get to.
I'm good. Nate, do you have any questions?
No, I think we covered a lot of ground for the most part, and I'm really glad that we brought up the part about the channeling that's going on, because it causes a lot of confusion. It gets people's hopes up in a false way, and it divides people. And I think people need to understand how it's being done, why it's being done, and use their discernment more decisively.
Nate, how about we'll let Dr. Brown go, and me and you can wrap up for like 5 minutes, and we can interact with the audience if you want to for a little bit, because would you want to do that, Nate?
Yeah, I got a couple extra minutes. I don't have a lot of time, but I got a couple, maybe
Okay.
10, 15.
Well, Dr. Brown, thank you so much for coming on. I always I just want to say that I always love when you come on my show. I really respect you for everything you've done all these years for our community. And I met Yemi in person. I met Intisam in person. I met I met those two in person, and they're just great. They're amazing people, amazing women, and I really think your organization's top notch, I really,
For your audience sake, Yemi and Intisam are two of our remote viewers, and they talk about you too, Rob.
Wow, that's cool. Yeah, they were really nice people, really nice women to meet in person, and I think your organization's you guys always have a spot on my show, so thank you.
Well, I appreciate coming on, Rob and Nathan. Thank you so much, and I hope your audience gets something useful out of this.
Yeah.
I know
And
they
do
did.
you want to tell people where they can find you, Dr. Brown? And thank you.
Yeah, the easiest thing, if you want to see some of the UFO videos that we record and show, and using specialized cameras, infrared and high frame rates, so you can actually see them. The cheapest and easiest way to do it is just to pull out your phone and go to my Instagram page, Courtney Brown Farsight, all one word. Courtney Brown Farsight, all one word. And you can see a whole bunch of examples of the video recordings. I mean, we were told, we didn't figure out how to do that. We were told how to do that. That's a whole nother story I won't go into now, but we did it, and we have the specialized camera equipment to be able to do that. And typically we record 10 to 30 UFOs overhead in any 15-minute period in the middle of the day using the specialized camera. And these are very clear. We've seen things that are so big they cover almost the entire sky. And we've had things that are just swooping around, and you can see some of the ones on Courtney Brown Farsight. If you don't believe it, just take a look. And when we publish our methods for doing the video recordings on our website, farsight.org, right on the menu, you'll see, how to do exactly what kind of cameras, what kind of settings, everything. And then farsightprime.com is the mother lode of everything. That's where all of our major projects are. So, we're heading into the wilderness deep. And so if your audience needs to know that they're not getting the truth from the from the mainstream anything. Just the shadow banning alone tells you they're trying to hide information from you. So farsightprime.com is not a streaming service that's competing with Hulu, Netflix, Disney, Paramount Plus as entertainment, as leisure entertainment. Farsightprime.com is an essential thing that you need to have. You need to be able to go through this. You need to be able to recreate history. And we're coming out with projects on a regular basis, but it's absolutely essential. It's not a leisure thing. It's fun in your leisure time. You won't find anything better to watch. But the point is, it's just not like the other streaming services like Paramount Plus and Disney, where you're just picking movies you want to see to fill up your leisure time. These are real things that are happening. They're more fun than those movies, but still they're more fun than the movies that you get in the other streaming services. But on the other hand, they're more fun also because they're real. Anyway, so the regular website that we have is farsight.org, and that's where you get sort of background information about learning remote viewing. Also on farsightprime.com, we have a huge library of instructional videos for how to do the remote viewing. But on farsight.org, you even have the transcripts for all of our projects, so that you can download them and feed them into your AI and have a conversation about everything. We see the AIs can't watch videos, but they can read transcripts. So when you feed them the transcript, you can talk to them about the projects. So if you say, okay, I've watched this project, but I don't have anyone to talk to about it, take the transcript, give it to your AI, and have a conversation. So
that's cool. That is really cool.
Okay, everybody, I want to thank you so much for inviting me, and I hope you guys invite me back.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Dr. Brown. And that was Dr. Courtney Brown, everybody. And go follow him at farsightprime.com and on his Instagram at Courtney Brown Farsight. And yeah, like Nate, I just kind of wanted to do like a little wrap up with you because like a lot of the audience members wanted to hear what you thought about everything that's going on about this war. And, like, me and you, like we've done show, but I mean, like ever since all this shit broke out, like, like the massive release of the Epstein files, 3 million files that still have not been released to the public. Like, and what's crazy is like, I've been saying like, okay, like, why is it that like, that they were able to amass this amount of files on this person and never arrest him, or like how could it, and the short answer to that is that we're being run by a group of, off-world pedophiles and on-world pedophiles. And then I think that honestly ties into the war. So like, before we finish up, I just kind of wanted to get your idea of everything that's going on, the war, the Epstein, like all the current events and stuff,
Yeah, well, I've talked about the Epstein files potentially being a kind of a global satanic ritual, the release of karma. There, I found the term for that, and I can't think of it. It was it's like karmelic law or something with a C, karmic something. It was a kind of a spin-off of the root word karma, but it's a karmic law. But basically, they're pushing the karma onto the public because the public's finding out about it, and they're not going to do anything about it. They're not going to march in the streets, demand justice. They're going to try to go on with their lives, and by default, consent. So, we talked about that. And, as far as why there's no prosecutions, I mean, Epstein was an intelligence asset for the Mossad, MI6, the CIA. I mean, he was a global individual who essentially had his hands in everything. I just want to caution people when they're reading these files, because there's something called honeypots. So what honeypots is that, like, let's say you've got a server in the Defense Department and you want to keep hackers out. So what do? You can only have so much security to keep them out. They're eventually going to get through. So what you do is you create fake servers. They're easier to get into than the one that you're trying to protect. And then you fill them full of what you would call honey, which is false information that you can that you're able to trace after the breach takes place and they steal the data. Then the intelligence agencies use that fake data to track it. So they'll track it through the dark web and wherever it goes, through the networks. And then they can use it as kind of a call tag to identify where the roots of the distribution of information go. So, but that's what a honeypot is. And I know for a fact that there's false information in those because they would never leave it undone. They would never leave it untouched. So a lot of people are reading things and then jumping on it, and we don't even know if they're actually true. And I'm not referring to the accusations. I think most of those are probably true, if not all. Some of them may have been consensual contracts where the individual gets involved with Jeffrey Epstein's network, and then they get hurt as a result of it. So it's a mixed bag of things. But be careful what you buy into, because it may not be 100% true. So that's something to worry about too, because they would love to put, they're going to do it. They're going to put distractions in there for us. So everybody's pointing this out, pointing that out. And I think we're seeing some of that. We're seeing like a list of things that are coming out. Like, for example, and I should have asked this to Courtney Brown tonight. They remote viewed Jeffrey Epstein twice. The first time they had inconclusive results. They just saw dark entities coming for him. The second time, they redid the project, and they found that he was murdered in a cell. Now we find out information and some evidence to indicate that he may have been smuggled out of the cell, and an imposter put in who was already dead or murdered on the spot.
Or a clone. It could be a clone, It could have used a clone body or something like that.
Well, according to what I saw with the nose was more of a hook nose, so it wasn't a good clone. It looked like him. We don't know what's going on. We don't even know if we're looking at real images. He had a barbed wire tattoo around, I think, his left, just above or just below his left shoulder, I think it was. And in the pictures of him being stretchered out, or whoever that was, didn't have the barbed wire tattoo. So that's not conclusive evidence of a swap. It could mean that maybe his nose was broken in the struggle. That's why it's changed in shape. And maybe he had the tattoo removed since that picture was, taken, that was distributed about the tattoo. So, but, it's hard to say. Is he really alive? Is he really dead?
There was a video that surfaced a couple of days ago. There was some dude, he was just cruising in South Florida, and he looked. I think I still have the video. I'll send it to you. He looked exactly like Jeffrey Epstein. I'm talking exactly. You know what I mean? And he was just chilling, cruising with it and drop top. With the top off his car. You know what I mean? I was just like, what the fuck? But then there were also images that surfaced of him supposedly in Israel and Lebanon, and I was like, oh, oh, this is great. Now they let this motherfucker go. He's probably running all over the Middle East. He probably got a chop shop going on over there, a human chop shop. You know what I mean? Because we know that's how sick this person was. Some of these references in the files to jerky, like this ongoing thing of like this jerky theme, that really freaked me out. I was like, what is he talking about with jerky? You know what I mean? That was like
grape soda. You know, what's the grape soda? Blood is the jerky human meat.
Yeah.
You know, and there's this one reference where they walk the jerky over. Did they walk the little boy or little girl over to eat them? Was it like Hansel and Gretel? I mean, you know, so it's sick.
It's actually when you start to think about it, it's absolutely insane. You know what I mean? It's like it's absolutely insane. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's not. It's no different than what's been going on for a long time. I mean, we could have got. You know, there's another thing that could have. I could ask Courtney, because you had these ancient blood festivals, cannibalistic festivals, and they remote viewed one that was destroyed right as it was happening. Another positive or more positive group came over, ET group, and they vaporized the area and vitrified the statues. And this is a part of Egypt, it's part of a military base that they only allow certain people in to look at the ruins, but they can't explain why it's burnt. Why it's vitrified. It isn't just fire, it is literally high heat. They think maybe it was a coronal mass ejection event, but when it was remote viewed, it was another ET group that had enough of the cannibalistic rituals that were taking place. And this was after the Orion group, or the Orion, whatever you want to call it, alliance showed up and repurposed the pyramids after Young or Dryas event, the last cataclysm, and then they set up shop and you know, they took over. So this is what they brought Satanism to Earth's cosmic shores. They're the ones responsible for it. And it's no different today than it was before. And it's the same program. It never, people talk about where do the ETs go? Where do these gods go? They never left.
Yeah.
Just like Courtney Brown was saying, that the same pedophile ETs are still around. And some of these gods are actually individuals. So, you know, it begs the question, you've got a lot of people in the SSP. I've encountered them in the occult world with the Joy of Satan, where people were told that they're ET. I mean, they're a pagan god, or they have memories within a like Project Ibis or different program. You know, there can only be one Ra. So the question is, there can only be one Zeus and Horus and so on and so forth. What in the world is going on with people? What are they doing with them? Are they taking a fragment of this ET's consciousness and putting it into someone so they share his memories? Exactly what's going on. And that's something that people that have these memories really need to question as to what exactly is going on, and do they really want to be this negative ET persona that has harmed people for long periods of time and raped and murdered and massacred large numbers of people? Is that really the person that you want to be? You know, no matter how the military handlers or however they put a spin on it, do you really want to be that individual? So, you know, if I was in that situation, if I had those memories, I would be questioning that. And, you know, I would determine I wouldn't want to be that person.
And when it comes to the war, do you think like the war is being actually played out on like a multidimensional level or something like that? Like, do you think there's more stuff going on behind the scenes? Like, do you think like it's some big blood ritual? Like, I mean, or like, do you think like people are trying to bring out end times prophecies? Like, there's so many questions I could ask you about what you think about this war. Like, I haven't talked to you about it yet.
They obviously are trying to recreate, or not recreate, but to create for the first time this Armageddon scenario. In fact, Pete Hegseth is a fanatic, is a complete fanatic. I don't know how to classify him. He goes beyond Christian conservative. He goes beyond Christian fundamentalist. I mean, he's somewhere out there in left field with this, but he believes, and he's actually told, you know, enlisted members to some degree or another. Not sure if this is like the mass message going through the military, but we're fighting the precursor war to Armageddon. This is the build up to it, is how he sees it. So, and this is going to bring back Jesus Christ. So you have, I mean, and then, you know, the Jewish people think this is going to bring back their Messiah, which is it's Yahweh. So, you know, everyone's trying to bring this Messiah in by completely destroying the planet and each other. It's incredibly sick, and it's part of the control system. So, that this is just aspects of the control system popping off, and there's a tug of war going on as to who wins out here. Is it the Allah faction, or is it the Yahweh faction, or is it the Jesus faction? And frankly, they've taken Jesus's words, and it's kind of like what I think, I'm not sure if it's the Book of the Covenant or what
Bro,
part of the Bible.
You just hit on something so important, though. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I've been saying this I feel like all these Abrahamic religions were started by the Anunnaki. I say that to people, it really seems like it, right? Like, I don't know. It just seems like, and the fact that they've been fighting for so long, all of them, you know what I mean? Like, it's either Christians versus Muslims, or Muslims versus Jews, or Jews versus Christians. Well, usually the Christians and Jews are pretty aligned, but like, you know what I mean? It's different factions of them fighting all the time. You know what I mean? Over who's God's better and this and that. I'm like, man, these are old paradigms. These need to go. You know what I mean? Like, for us to evolve as a human species, I think these old religious paradigms need to go. I keep saying that, and people disagree with me, but I'm like, listen, man, these religions aren't bringing anything good. None of them are. I mean, I believe in. It's not to say I don't believe in Jesus. I believe in Jesus. I believe he was a good person. He could have been an ascended master, and maybe he was the son of God. I don't know, but I don't even know who God is. For all I know, we live in a matrix. You know what I mean? And like, to me, it seems pretty bad here. Like good things happen all the time because we live in some kind of weird dualistic nature. But I can't say someone was the son of God if I don't even know who God is. And that's not. I'm not saying I don't believe in God. I believe in a source. I believe in a higher power. I'm just saying we don't even know who's controlling this thing. And these religions got everybody twisted and fucked up. I don't know if that made any sense, but
No, it makes sense. Everyone says the same. Well, not everyone. I wish everyone said the same thing. They don't. When you have any kind of religion that preaches hate and violence, it's not anything of the Creator. So, if it was, it's highly corrupted from its original, version. So, I would go by that. That would be the rule of thumb. If it spreads hate, if it talks about a jealous God, if it basically preaches the containment gospel, as I call it, which is you have to give all of your power away to a higher power, and then you're basically stuck into these social norms and customs, and you're locked into this reality. Then it's the gospel of containment. You're not getting out. You're not ascending. You're not going anywhere. You're just going to be going through this literal hell over and over again. So, this is why people can't read these holy books and take them literally and follow their heart at the same time. They've got to follow their heart and cherry pick and also follow the law, because if you don't, you can get arrested for practicing aspects of Christianity and, Judaism and Islam. And Islam needs a reformation. It needs to be reformed so it isn't as violent and is not as radical, but why, if it's of God, it wouldn't need that. So that's just it. And yeah, we're in a control system, and these religions, whether they have positive origins or not, are all being twisted and corrupted and used as a social engineering program to maintain a perpetual state of global and regional chaos.
Yeah, can I give you an example of something I saw today? So one of my friends sent me this. There was a Hindu guy in London, and we know that like the radical Islamification of London has gotten pretty out of control, And this basically what all this Indian guy was doing is he said he put a sign on his store that he wouldn't sell halal meat. That's it. That's all he did. And these radical Islamists, they attacked him. They sent him a voice message. They played it this was on Sahar TV. He's like I think he's an Israeli guy, but regardless, like this Muslim guy was on this Hindu guy's voicemail. He's like, I'll take your daughter. We'll do grooming gangs. And this is all over because this guy wouldn't sell halal meat. I'm like, these people are insane. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, like it's getting out of control,
But to be fair to them, they're constantly under attack from the Western culture. So, if you're constantly under attack and your life's on the line, your way of life is a threat, your homeland's under threat, and it's nonstop, you're going to be more radicalized than if you were to just be left to your own devices and be offered positive things in the global community, trade with other countries, traveling, living a normal life, and practicing your religion in peace and not bothering anyone with it. That's what everyone should be doing if they feel they need a religion. But they're not going to let that happen because for one, when they broke the Ottoman Empire up, they created the powder keg of the Middle East, and they put warring tribes together in countries under dictators. And this benefited the coming military industrial complex, the Rothschild family that bankrolled this operation and founded Israel to set up this whole scenario that we're dealing with and have been living with for decades. So I can't fully blame the Muslims, but because I mean, what happens, same with Christianity, when there's poverty and hardship, people and religions become radicalized. And if you look at West Virginia, there's a lot of poverty there, there's a lot of hardship. You find a lot of unusual sects of Christianity, people that play with rattlesnakes and
snake charmers.
And if they get bit, they feel gone to Jesus. It was God's intent. Well, God gives you common sense. If you're going to handle a rattlesnake, you need to do it in the appropriate way and not egg on and not try to anticipate a bite or do something to put yourself at risk. There's no reason a snake needs to be in church. It should be out in the woods and in its own habitat, or at the bare minimum in someone's cage or a zoo. But this is forced radicalization, Rob, and it's social engineering. It's negative social engineering. It goes back to what Courtney Brown was saying about the ETs social engineering things, and two sides at a struggle with each other. One is trying to accelerate certain things that take place. Meanwhile, the other side, the negative side, is doing the same thing. So, I mean, you could look at this in different ways. You could say, okay, the evil side's trying to accelerate all of this chaos to tear down the current system and rebuild an Orwellian one where everyone's controlled by AI. And then the counter story is from Courtney Brown and what he says are the positive ETs is they're tearing down the system too by accelerating these events. And so both sides are using apparently the same agenda. So who do you trust? What do you do? It's very difficult. It's scary, and people need answers, but we don't have any. I mean, the only answer that I could possibly say is to get yourself ready to exit this system. If you die in the next few years because of war or just austerity, disease, lack of health care, whatever it may be, even suicide when life becomes unbearable because the evil overlords that run our system have abandoned the people, and we're left to ourselves with gross mismanagement and extreme tyranny like we could be going into. You need to really, as Christians would say, get yourself right with God. But I think really you need to know how to make that connection back and get out of the soul traps when you die. And, that's what I'm focusing on. And I think that's really and that involves healing, because if you don't do that, all of those trauma points, all the damage that you have that you're going through is literally hooks that anchor yourself here into this trauma loop. So that's the best thing. I mean, and then just try to do whatever you can. But really, people need to stand up to their government for the first time, especially here in America. It's as if people are just domesticated animals here. They won't do anything. We need an animal farm type of scenario where the animals finally get enough of it and they rebel. How dare these people take our creativity, our wealth, everything, our culture, and just flush it down the toilet for these absurd military escapades where they're dragging us into World War III. And for what? To cover up their pedophilic habits and everything else that they do? It's more than just that. They're rebuilding the whole world in front of us into a hellscape. When is the people going to stand up and say, we've had enough of this shit?
Yeah.
Well,
I think a lot of the youth, like I see a lot of the youth, they're not buying into this war. You know what I mean? And like, I mean, what's funny is like, I tried to do I had a girl named the Arabian Oracle on the other day. She used to be Islamic, and she didn't, she doesn't like Islam. So she got out of Islam and embraced spirituality. But I had her do a world peace meditation the other day, because I thought it would be good to do a meditation for world peace. Hardly anybody showed up. So it's like people don't have faith that we can have world peace. That's a problem. You need to have faith that you can change the world, because we can change the world. I mean, it's going to take a lot. It's not going to be peaceful right away. Like you said, we have to stand up, but like, that's what we should be looking for, is to like achieve like world peace, to where we're all getting along to a certain extent. Right. Because like with these people that control us are like, You know, like that's their end game, is to keep controlling us and keep us under their boot, right? I mean, so it's like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, unfortunately, it takes a lot for people act, before people act. And okay, so let's look at Israel right now. They've claimed Iran is going to be attacking them in the United States for the last 30 years. So Iran knows that that this threat was looming for the past 3 decades. So they've built up. They've spent 30 years preparing for this moment, and they knew it was coming. And then they have the white paper out there, which I recommend people reading. It's called "Which Path to Persia." And it's a PDF you can look up. It's the same institute that did the UFO research.
Tell us about it. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
I've skimmed the document. I've skimmed the document. There's a lot to read there, but basically what it does is it gives you. It's not for people to read. Essentially, it's for the higher ups. But like I said, and like a lot of people understand, is that they have to release the karma. So they have to put this out in the public, like with COVID and the SPARS document from Johns Hopkins University. They had to put the blueprint of what was going to happen out into the public sector before they did it. So in the case of Iran, they did this which path to Persia document, which talks about various strategies to sell the war, first off, to set Iran up into a situation where it would be fruitful and easy for them to start working on a nuclear program. Look the other way, give them the resources, give them money, give them whatever it takes, but let it happen and encourage it indirectly. So when they started, they'd have an excuse to invade, and then how to sell this to the American people through the media. Believe it or not, the elites still go through the trouble to attempt to figure out how to sell a war or to sell an agenda to the public. So that tells you that they still fear the public. It also tells you that they still need consent, but their fear is getting less and less because the public just consents to everything here in the United States. Right now, from what we can see, and this is because it's heavily obfuscated by the media, is that people in Israel are rioting right now and protesting Netanyahu. They don't want this war, and they don't want to die in it, and they don't want to see their country blown up. It's Jewish people aren't the bad people, and neither the Arabs or any of these people. It's the leadership that's bad.
Absolutely.
If you ask any Iranian on the street, would you rather have peace or this? And they're going to say peace, absolutely. The same thing goes with anyone living in Israel, and the same thing goes here in the United States, Canada, all over Europe. Nobody wants this but these elite psychopaths and sociopaths. And we're under the illusion that and it's getting to the point where it's too late, because eventually they're going to clamp down. They're going to put the brain chips in. They're going to clamp down and take away everyone's private consciousness. They're going to take away your rights, all of them. And you won't have the ability to speak up and speak out about this and organize, because they'll stop it before it gets started. And that's what the plan is. And,
Wow.
While Courtney was talking, I was just thinking, he was referring from the positive ET perspective. I'm looking at it from the negative perspective. After they've caused all of this chaos, then what's the solution? It's AI. It's the AI takeover. What I see them doing is just restructuring the world stage to prepare for a world government. I'm not seeing this evidence of like Stargates and things like that. It was Israel's desire for the U.S. to take Greenland decades ago. It's been part of a plan by these people who plan everything. It had nothing to do with anything that people were talking about. These are strategic assets that they want to acquire. They're building a world government. Maybe Greenland, being as cold as it is, would be a good place to build server farms for the global AI control system. You can keep it cool.
Yeah, I just did a show on that today. I did a show on the data centers, because I have a friend who comes on my show. She's fighting against the data centers in Ohio. They're trying to put them up all around farmland. You know what I mean? And these data centers use massive amounts of water, and they pollute the water. It's just like a sick fantasy that they're trying to why do you need all these data centers? You know what I mean? To feed AI. Like, that's insane. You know what I mean? It's absolutely insane thinking.
It's the track, attack, and kill us. That's what it is. That's all it's for. That's the end game. To depopulate, to control the population and force them to accept depopulation and the stripping of their rights and dignity. And that's what it is. That's why they need this. There's no reason for this. No logical person, no reasonable individual in authority, if they were reasonable and moral, would go for this. No one. And nobody in the public in their right mind would agree to this shit, that they feel like they don't have an option, or they feel like their life is too complicated. What can I do? And for the most part, there isn't much, because nobody wants to get together and really stand up. So yeah, I guess it'll have to wind up like it is in Israel, where there's bombs going off and everything's on fire and people are dying and half your family's dead, before everyone realizes, you know what? It's time to step out of my comfort zone. I can't go to work tomorrow. My job was blown up. I can't kiss my wife. She's dead. My kids are dead. Half of them, maybe. I got a couple left. I'm huddling in a bunker with some neighbors and a few police officers and some military personnel, and there's wounded. Maybe we should have spoke up sooner, but now I guess we're going to have no other choice. But and that's literally the way it's going to go, and that's how far it'll go, I think, before it really changes. And I don't, I'm not optimistic here for any. I think humanity survives this like it always has. I don't know how long it's going to take before it gets better, but I don't see anything getting better from some of these people that are promising the white hats are going to save us, because all I see is disinformation. I'm still waiting for Robert Mueller to arrest Hillary Clinton and all of those people he was supposed to indict. That never happened. Yeah. Why is it that nobody atones for it? Nobody accounts, like nobody explains that. It's like, what happened with that? And it's like, oh, it's just part of the plan. We have to have disinformation mixed with truth. Otherwise, the white hats will get discovered and they'll weed them out. Come on, it's just like, Courtney said, is there a guy in a spacecraft in one of these ET groups that's leaking out all this information to the public? It's just like everyone's got their inside source, but over time, these sources never pan out. Well, he just disappeared. How'd you do that?
I have a light
completely
off. It's set on a timer. Get some good comments. I'll read some of the comment. This is from James Wick, because he says there are multiple agendas, and one of them was to try to get rid of people with Rh negative positive blood type. That would have been about 80% of the population. I don't know. It could be.
I don't know. I mean, I'm what is it? I'm not Rh negative. I'm A positive, and I've been used this in my lab and have had all these things. So I think there's too much emphasis put on the Rh negative stuff. I mean, there's obviously something going on with it, but it isn't the biggest. It isn't like, not every my lab is an Rh negative or anybody that's psychic. So it's a mixed bag there. But I don't know. Who knows? That person could be right for all we know. There could be a sub program or some program doing that. There's so much we really just don't know. But we do have at least the people listening to this podcast have a pretty good, clear picture of what's going on, with a few caveats thrown in that are confusing us.
Yeah. What I found interesting about what Courtney said was that, like, how dangerous this could really get. Like, trust me, I'm about America first. Like, I want us to be, I care about this country. I care about our soldiers. You know what I mean? Like, I just care about people. I care about the whole world, to be honest. But I don't know, like, it seemed like he was presenting all the options that could possibly happen in worst case scenarios and how bad it could get. You know what I mean? And I think people really need to think about that, because I don't know. I mean, I hope we're winning, I don't want anybody to win the war, but I hope we are winning. I don't know. It's so confusing, man. You know what I mean? It's so confusing. This whole thing has been like a big clusterfuck of emotions for me. And I've been glued to every alternative news feed. I've been watching like every second of this fucking war, dude. You know what I mean? The other day I was watching a podcast with two ex-Green Berets, and they were giving their opinion on it. And it was similar to Courtney Brown's. They don't see an optimistic, but then you talk to certain people, and certain people think that we're doing well in the war, So it's like, what is going on? Yeah. You know what I mean? What is really going on? I don't think anybody really knows.
Don't ever listen to Lindsey Graham, because Lindsey Graham said high gas prices, and Trump too is another one. High
Isn't
gas
Lindsey
prices.
Graham in the
are good.
Epstein files? Isn't he in the Epstein? I don't know.
I haven't heard of him being in the Epstein files. The rumor is that he's a closeted gay man who's extorted by Israel and is basically is provided with his secret life, and it's kept confidential so he can be this Christian conservative warmonger, this neoconservative person. And he's one of the worst. I listen to him. I don't hear an effeminate man. I hear a psychopath that's bloodthirsty. I hear a sick person. All he wants is war and destruction, and he won't fight himself. So if it goes far enough, I hope that Lindsey Graham gets dropped on the front lines in Iran. I think that would be fitting. Take him, Mark Levin, and all of these warmongers that are pushing this garbage. Take Trump, and if you could find Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, because I don't know if that's Ghislaine and who's sitting in jail. That person looks like that character on Saturday Night Live, the androgynous one called Pat. I don't know if you remember.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious.
It looks just like that person, the character, just a little thinner. And because it definitely doesn't look like Ghislaine. And I don't think they care anymore. They want us to see that. They want us to see that it's not true.
I grew up with I'll just tell you this. I grew up with my dad was in the Vietnam War, and I saw I saw the after effects of what he went through. And also my grandfather was a prisoner of war in World War II. So I saw what he had to deal with, and it wasn't good, man. It wasn't good. That's why they never wanted me going to the military. That's why I'm so worried about our military. Like, I have family that I have blood ties to the military. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like, I am concerned about the military. I am concerned about them going to the Strait of Hormuz. Like, I know we have the best military in the world and stuff like that, but like, honestly, like, this whole thing is really, it's shaky, man. It really, I don't know. It's just like, war is never good for anyone. It's the only thing war is good for is the controllers. Like you said, you know what I mean? The controllers,
Now think about this, Rob. While you were talking, I was just thinking about, and I was thinking about this a few days ago. I was thinking about when Trump first got elected back in 2016. Okay, first thing he said was, "We're going to spend a hell of a lot of money on, we're going to just invest in the military, and we're going to build the biggest, best military." And everyone who heard that deep down inside, if there's anything left of themselves still left inside them, if they have any of their oversoul left that they're still connected to, they would have heard that and said, that's not the right direction we need to go in. We don't have decent health care in this country. We have people that are unemployed. We have people that are dying in our streets.
Veterans. It's not just let's get it right. Let's not get it twisted. It's veterans who served our country and almost died in war, and now they're homeless in the streets. Yet they put illegals up in hotels, and they put illegals up in everywhere else. You know what I mean? They give illegals like the golden ticket here. They give them the Willy Wonka, but like, our veterans are dying in the streets. So what is wrong with this? You know what I mean?
My point is that Trump had to build a war machine before it could be utilized, and now it's being utilized. So I'm seeing a pattern here. I'm seeing a problem action solution scenario unfolding where the elites said, we're going to give Trump, we have predetermined elections, and I think we've had those for a long time, and I think it's depending on how high you go up, the more predetermined it is, because the stakes and the need to control is much greater. So suddenly the so-called outsider wins the election, and he wins it by the electoral college. So it looks like he just skirted by. He comes in, he fixes some things, and he exposes that a lot of our economic problems are based on our over-regulation of things. So he opens people's eyes to that, left and right. And, left and right wing. So everyone kind of, a lot of people woke up and they said, okay, well, let's meet in the middle and try to fix this. And I support that. I don't support this, but eventually you get a guy that builds trust. So then the election gets taken from him. So then this person comes in, Joe Biden, and he just totally reverses just about everything Trump does, except for the bad things that Trump did. He'll leave those alone. Just they're the good things to him. So then it just systematically.
I don't even think Biden. I don't even think Biden was conscious half the time. I think he was either a clone or he was like just like completely. I don't know if they had him drugged up or what, but like he was a complete fucking moron. You know, I mean, beyond moron. I mean, to let that many illegals in the country. You know what I mean? I mean, it was like a planned thing. Military aged men fighting it. You know, like it's like what are you doing?
Joe Biden would never do that, but the old Joe Biden wasn't told to do that. If he was told to do it, certainly he would do it. Yeah. So, but I think that was part of the whole thing. You get somebody in there that looks like they don't have their wits about them. And then you set this situation up, and then you have what we have. I mean, it is what it is. That's the best way to put it. It worked. The situation worked. If they wanted to do this the whole time, it worked. Everything that they did worked because we consented to it. And they bring Biden in, he screws everything up. The people, now the people are going to vote in bigger numbers, right? Of course, when Biden won all those votes, but there was more votes than people, and he got more votes than Obama. So it's just like a slap in the face. It's like we control everything, and you're just along for the ride. And if you look at it like that, you can see the pattern here because, they bring him in and now they've created a big enough problem where Trump can now come in with greater support, at least in the beginning, and set off the world and set the world on fire and completely bankrupt the country with these wars because we're not. And look, for the life of me, I had a friend of mine come over and tell me that it was a good thing that gas prices are going up. That it's a good thing that we're approaching $4 here on the East Coast. And, he's just as vulnerable as I am to this. He heard it on the news. He heard the presidents or the regime say, the regime said that it's a good thing that cost of oil is going up because we'll make a lot more money. No, you'll make a lot more money, and the money's going to come out of us, the people. It's going to come out of our monthly budgets, our weekly budgets. It's our food money. It's money that we needed for a vacation that we deserved. It's money for our co-pays, our health care, our clothes, our rent, our mortgage payments, our car payments. Something to just keep us our sanity, like just whatever creative outlet we want to pursue or a recreational thing that we want to do. That money was for that, and you're sucking the lifeblood out of us. You're just sucking us dry, and it's not going to help. It's not good for anything. It's a total lie. It's like everything now that comes out of his mouth is a lie. And it's just like these H-1 visas. The reason why we have to have H-1 visas and people coming from China, college students, right, is because black colleges are historically dependent on Chinese foreign exchange students. And when you look it up, it's a total fabrication. He pulled it out of his ass. Where's this man that used to tell the truth that people really believed in? He's gone because he never existed. It was just a facade. This is the real Trump that we're getting. This is the man that everyone voted for but didn't know who they were voting for. This is what you get. And I think this should be the last lesson for the American voter, that the game is over. You need to stop playing it. The next thing you need to do, it's not the ballot box. You need to take it to the streets and protest. You need to stand up and say enough of this crap. We don't consent to your pedophilia. We're not, I mean, God, it's just, can you imagine having a president exposed for pedophilia 30 or 40 years ago? They'd kick him out of office for smoking pot, kissing and not telling, having an affair, all of that. You got to resign. Now you can be an open pedophile and a pedophile enabler and protector. You can be an international war criminal and be elected to the president of the United States or any position in government. And it's okay now. Look how bad we've sunk. We've got no law and order. It's total lawlessness and total chaos as a result of it. And we're paying the price, and so are people abroad. There's people dying right now who don't deserve it. None of those people in Iran deserve to die, and nobody in Israel deserves to die. I tell you who deserves to die. These world leaders, and I'd say their names, but you never know. I may get a visit. You can't even criticize Israel, and I think it's 13 or 28 states or something like that now have passed laws that say you can't. I mean, here in Maryland, you still can, but they're going to come after you. If you live in Florida and you say Netanyahu needs to be in prison for war crimes, they can come and arrest you and fine you for doing that. I mean, literally, this is how far we've sunk. And then they turn around and say, oh, they have no control over anything. They're just an ally. They just need our help. BS. It's bullshit.
Yeah.
We are occupied and have been for a long time. They're just coming out of the woodwork. They're showing their faces.
I'm hoping I have like the smallest hope for Trump. I'm hoping that he turns this around. Like, but like, you know, like I don't know. Like I don't know. You know, like I mean, I felt like he was outside the system. Like I voted for Trump because I felt like he was outside the system. I felt like because I knew all along that there's a shadow government that runs this whole fucking matrix. You know what I mean? And they're the ones who call the shots and they're the ones who make the wars. But for part of me felt like Trump was outside the system. I felt like finally we got someone who's outside the system. You know, but like now it seems like it's so confusing, you know. I don't want to, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I'm just really confused.
And I think right now is a good time to be honest with ourselves and say that people like we'll give Arcane Raw credit here. He's been losing his shit and yelling at everybody, but he was right. He was right. He wasn't right about Kamala Harris getting in, but he retracted that back because it's just desperation coming out of his mouth. But he was right. Let's see who else is right. Mr. David Icke, he's absolutely right. He's been right about so many things. He was right. He's right about the ancient societies, the cannibalism, the rape, and all of the horrible things that they do and how they're still doing it, how it's the same bloodlines and the same crap, same programming. He's right about that. And he was right about Trump, and he was very accurate about Trump because he did the research. He looked and he followed the money to see where Trump got his money at and where, you know, how it all unfolded, how he got to be where he is. And it's the Israeli lobby. They were the ones that bailed him out when he was bankrupt, and you know, when he bankrupted his businesses and things. They were there because he was a long-term groomed project. And when you follow the money, see that like David Icke did, and there's others. Now there's an organization called the Rouge PAC that did that, and they were against him until the day he got elected in 2016, and then they changed their tune because they're always had this opinion. Let's just make friends and work with everybody, get everybody to work together for global policy. And Trump shows extreme promise for this. Well, as it turns out, just once again, it turns into be a ruse on the public. He's not the leader that we elect is not who they say they were, who they said they were. They're not legitimate, and I don't think we've had a legitimate president since Robert F. Kennedy.
No.
Or John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy. Robert F. Kennedy was killed before he got a chance to run. But John F. Kennedy, I think that was the coup. The final coup needed for the CIA to take over the Oval Office, to take over the executive branch. That was them flexing their muscle. And I think since then we've had nothing but puppets. And Trump is no different. It's just that it's what her name's Maria Abramovich. I've seen a video of her.
She says the spirit
circulating on.
Yeah, she's a psycho.
Right. And she's in the back seat of a car being, driven around like has a chauffeur, and somebody's filming her and they're talking to her. And she said, what do you think about Trump? And she said, he's the great magician. He's the one that's going to fool the people. She said something like that. And and that's exactly what he's been. At least she was honest about it. When you see Trump, and there's another thing too, early on in his first term, especially when he had that meeting with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, that really tense meeting that they had. I don't remember what it was over, but if you look at him, he was holding his hands like this. This is it's a Masonic secret society type of hand sign that they do, and it has something to do with directing and kind of grounding your energy. So these people are well versed in the occult. This man is not what he says he is. He is a magician. He's in the secret societies. Newt Gingrich on, I think it was Fox News, they asked him, and this is he said that he said basically a half truth. They said, why is everybody so much against Donald Trump? And it doesn't matter what political party they're on. This is before he got elected, I think it was, or after he got elected, shortly after. He said because he doesn't belong to their secret societies. Well, apparently he does, maybe just not the ones that the majority are part of. Maybe he's part of the radical Israeli side of this. The radical Zionist. Obviously, he is, to do what he's done, to put Israel first and take us into this crazy war. But he apparently represents a group of radicals within a group of crazy people that run this world, and they didn't even want him, but apparently they do, because they play both sides of the coin. So they make it look like they don't want him. They make it look like they're against him, but in fact, they were all behind the scenes, just like in professional wrestling. They're enemies when they're in front of the curtain, but when they go behind the curtain, it's a country club, and they're all in on it. Just like George Carlin has said many times in stand-up acts.
Yeah, he said we're part of a big club, but we're not in it, right?
Right.
Wow.
And it's a huge disappointment to see this. We got teased with prosperity in the first term, and it didn't go far enough because Congress was against all of it, and everything was by executive decree. All that did was just set up more and more authority in the hands of the executive branch. They've let the president declare war and go to war for decades. I don't know how long it's been since we've had congressional approval. I know it's been within my lifetime, but I think I was a child. I'm 52. I was a child. I was less than 20 years old. It was probably less than 15 when they needed congressional approval to go to war. At some point, that went out the window, even before the laws were changed. And I don't even think they've adequately changed them, because they don't care. They don't care about the laws that are on the books. That's for us, not for them. And they'll do whatever they want because they're lawless, evil psychopaths. And actually, they're worse than that. The ones who run things appear to be psychopaths, but I think a lot of them too are sociopaths, have no feeling at all.
This was a good comment from Derek. He's just being he's just presenting a different option. And this is, we can have discussions. He said, Nathan, he said people should protest in the streets. That's exactly what the people of Iran did, and over 30K were unalived. So then the USA goes in and helps. I mean, if we are helping and if we do see a change, like, but my only issue with that is, like, when we've overthrown governments before and we put in leaders in, it's always a leader that, like, doesn't work out for the country, and like the USA, well, like, I don't, you know what I'm talking about?
Let me give you a reason. Well, this is going to make me sound really radical, but Iran was overthrown under Operation Ajax. Okay, that's when they put the Ayatollah in there and everything else. So that was a U.S. program. CIA, probably MI6, other the same characters behind 9/11 and everything else. So every time there's been a revolution like that, yeah, the intelligence agencies from other countries are at work. Sometimes foreign militaries get involved too. So what I'm talking about is if the people of the world, and actually what it needs to happen here, the people need to stand up to their government. And it's going to happen eventually, because they're not going to be able to buy food anymore. You know, I just shipped a box, 13 by 13 by 42 inches. It weighed 44 pounds, okay? I didn't even bother with the insurance, because it was wood that I cut for somebody who was making a miniature house. So, but it cost $163 to send that box. That same box 20 years ago was around $40 to ship. Okay. Wow. Nobody's making much more money than they were back then. And, everything is outrageously priced. We can't afford to live anymore. And when it gets to the point when you can't eat and you can't go to the doctor and you can't drive to work and your job closes and everything else, well, then people are going to have to take it to the streets. And yeah, they're going to unalive people. They're going to kill people. They're going to do terrible things. But you got to look at it like this. This has happened before. How many people are going to die in the long run if nobody stands up and does anything? Okay, 30 million people could be killed by a government in an act of genocide. But if the public really stood up, they could end the genocide permanently. If they could get rid of these people who are running things. The problem is we live in a simulation. We have extraterrestrials that are overlord. We have ET overlords that control everything. they've infiltrated the bodies of these people. So they're controlling them. Some of them are actually ETs in human bodies, and others are hosted and taken over by tech and attachments, just like they do in our community. But, you know, it's much more stringently controlled, or maybe the same, I don't know, but they've got to control all of these people across the world to create this horrible, horrible symphony of destruction that we have to live with every day. So they're running everything. So, you know, what do you do about that? That's a good question. You can raise the first thing you need to do is wake up to it and then start doing something about it. They can't boss everybody. If everyone's on the same page, and this is why there's so many competing religious belief systems and political belief systems and conflicting economic systems. We're divided so many different ways and suppressed at many different levels. People need to realize that. I think the only solution to this is to keep saying these things and get other people to say them and let it spread. And maybe in a century or two, if we're still here, which I'm sure we will, because the ETs likely aren't going to allow nuclear war, because this is their prison. They don't need to let it go offline. They're not ready to get rid of it yet. It's not time to turn it into Mars. You know, it still has atmosphere. It's got promise. There's hundreds of thousands of millions of years of more prison time that this world can be utilized for. They're not going to let it blow to hell because, you know, Israel and Iran and you know, the Armageddon thing, they're going to take us to the brink. They're going to destroy everything. But I think in the end here, the strategy is to tear it down and rebuild it in the image that they want. And you know what that is? That's the AI takeover. So we're walking a fine line of destruction. It can go one way or it can go the other. But the people in charge are the ones dictating how it's going to end, and we're not giving our input as the public. People in Israel are right now, and I'm sure they're protesting in Iran too.
Yeah.
We just don't know about it. Anyway, Rob,
there was a blackout in Iran. There was it's man. Well, this was a good episode, man. This might end up on Rumble, honestly, guys. So anybody who's watching this now, but this might actually end up on Rumble. But like, you know,
and it'll be on Rumble with not a single comment under it, right? Isn't that weird?
Yeah, it'll get like 1,000 views. It'll get like over 2,000 views, but like no comments. Yeah. Guys, I'll try to keep this up on YouTube. Just like you share the video, subscribe. Obviously, I can't monetize this video. Like I can't put ads on this because like, you know, this will definitely get taken down. Like you know, so support the podcast.
Listen, the bomb makers make the toilet paper and they make all the other stuff, so they don't want their ads on something like this.
Yeah, exactly. So support the podcast if you can. Share this out. You know, comment on it, like it, and subscribe. And yeah, and you know, I'm just like totally confused over all this, man, guys. Like, I'm just like, this war has got me so confused, and like, you know, honestly, I just am. I'm really confused. It's crazy to me. Like, but I can't stop tuning in. I'm tuning into every update. You know what I mean? Like, that's how, you know, it's absolutely insane, is what it is. You know, I'm just yeah.
If there was a way to calm your soul, what would it be? If you knew, I think the biggest thing that people are afraid of is dying because they don't know where they're going to go next. So back to one of my original points. If you can calm that fear inside you and make that connection back to the Creator and give you and have at least some sort of reassurance that this is not going to be a repetitive, you're not going to be coming back here, that no matter what happens, you know, you're going to get out. At least that would be something to calm people from the inside, some inner peace. Unfortunately, that's so hard to do these days, isn't it? So, you know, it's going to take more work. I hope we have the time to do that. I hope we have the time to reach that point. As many people that are listening to this, I hope they get the opportunity to reach that point in their life, so that they're not fearing for their lives and what's going to happen, because, you know, death is not that scary if you know what's going to happen afterward, and it's a positive thing. But living in fear like this, and then knowing that you're going to be recycled, knowing that this is just going to be forgotten and mind wiped, it's an absolute horrible way to live. And I would encourage people to really try to work on themselves. try to connect with God, but not the God of these religions, the one that you feel inside, if that exists, that instinct that you have inside. Connect with that version of the Creator and do the best you can with it and expel all of this propaganda and crap, because that's what got us to this point. It's what made us consent.
That's a
So
good point, Nate. Everything you said, I agree with.
I have no other advice. What we're going to do, march in the streets. We got to get people have to hurt more for that, unfortunately. And I don't know where this is going and how long it's going to take. So it is what it is. That's why Courtney Brown couldn't answer the questions. Are we all going to die in a nuclear fire? And it's just like, well, it could go different directions.
Yeah, it's a very unstable timeline right now. You know what I mean? It's like I see it, like from my psychic senses, see a lot of chaos, a lot of instability, and a lot of like unanswered, like you said, unanswered. Like it could go many different ways, and we're just hoping that it doesn't go the worst way, and the worst way is like sleeper cells activating inside the United States, bombs going off, people going crazy. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to see that. I love my country. Like, I love, I love everybody. I like the whole world. You know what I mean? I don't want to see shit go down here. You know what I mean? And it already is. There was a Muslim guy who drove into a synagogue. I mean, there was another guy who shot people in Texas. He had a shirt on that said a property of Allah. I mean, we're already seeing it, like, it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, we should worry about an eBay auction or something we need to buy we're saving up for, or going camping or going to a concert, or we should be thinking about those things instead of this stuff. Everyone should.
Yeah.
The people of the world have had enough of this. I hope that they speak up.
Yeah, I agree, man. I agree. Well, thanks, man. Do you want to tell people where they can find you? And thanks, dude. This was a good show.
Yeah,
I think.
I'm at the YouTube, the Planetary Consciousness Project. Sooner or later, I'll be back online. I've added a couple videos there in the past 2 weeks or so, but they're just podcast appearances. But I'm going to be doing things where I do videos again. I've just got to transition into this new job that I'm working on. And once I get that schedule's kind of figured out and I'm used to it, I'm going to start doing more stuff on social media. But for the moment, that's it. I'm not doing anything else until I've cleared up my own problems. But I'm reachable on Facebook. So if you need to talk to me, write down my name and you can find me there on Facebook. Just send me a friend invite. A lot of people do. And, I try to talk to everybody I can, but I have time to talk to.
Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in, and I'll be back. I think I'm off tomorrow. I don't think I have any interviews lined up for tomorrow, so I don't know. But I always end up scheduling something. But I mean, we'll see. And thanks everybody, and I will see you guys all soon. And everybody be safe out there, and take care of your neighbors and friends and family, and everybody look out for each other. And have a good night, everyone. Good night, guys.
Good night.